Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus, coming to you on Thursday, the 13th day of June, the year of our Lord 2024. It is episode 654, and I don't have a book to review. I've actually completed, I think, 2 books since I last did a book review, but today I wanted to talk about a TV show. So I'm going to title this On Mr. Cooper. Now, before I get into it, before I explain, let me remind you the best way that you can help me make a difference, the best way you can help me grow the show, overcome the algorithms, and quite frankly, just let an alternate voice be heard is to join me by like, share, and subscribe this here podcast. In order to do that, it just takes a little bit of your time. You can follow on your podcatcher of choice. Right now, it can be found on the iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, and a couple other ones. TuneIn and iHeartRadio, I believe. I'm not asking for much, but 30 seconds to a minute of your time. Share it out. Tell your friends. Join me on the social media of your choice. As I say, I have a page and a group over at Facebook. I am a pro at Gab, and I still drop in at MeWe. And I would love to see you guys there. Participate, chime in, respond, emoji, whatever floats your boat. And if you're particularly motivated, if you could go ahead and put a review or rating in on that, that would be extremely helpful as well. All right, so today we're going to do something just a little bit different. Now, I was a fan of The Big Bang Theory, which was essentially created by the same guys that did 2.5 Men, only maybe a little less raunchy, and without Charlie Sheen. Take it or leave it. And what's interesting is this guy basically got his start on Roseanne's show, and I was never a fan of Roseanne, not that I didn't like her as a person or the show didn't have its merits, just wasn't my thing. In fact, it'd be fair to say that my mother wanted nothing to do with that show. That being said, that guy's been around. He's been involved in a lot of different things. And the last iteration that was on was Young Sheldon. Now, I distinctly remember discussing this with a coworker of mine, and he was quite agitated because he really was a fan of The Big Bang Theory, or if you prefer BBT, right? As was I. I thought it was quite fun, and then there's the whole concept, are they laughing at the nerds and geeks or laughing with them, or some combination thereof? And, at the end, the guy gets the girl, or actually multiple guys get the girls. So there is that. Now, is that fantasy or is that reality? I don't know. I'll leave it to your mind. But Young Sheldon is supposed to pick up back in Texas, and of course, being a reformed Texan, right, a Texian, I had a special interest in that, and it was just interesting to see what they would do with that. Now, as an aside, having the daughter of the actress that played Sheldon's mother in BBT, The Big Bang Theory, right, having her daughter play his mother in when he was a kid was stroke of luck and genius. It was great. The mannerisms, the face, very similar. Well done. But this is where I want to go. The conflict, right? There's a conflict within the family between the genius son and the brother and sister, and then the mother and the dad, and all this other backstory. Now, in the original show, it wasn't exactly what I would say a very sympathetic view of George Cooper. And that's okay. It's been years later, and quite frankly, people change their opinions and change their behaviors after they suffer a loss or a trauma. So in the course of the show, 2 things are going to happen. 1, the character is going to go off to Caltech, and 2, his dad's going to die. Now, one of the things that was most striking to me in the 7 seasons that it was in, and again, knowing the creators and the writers of the show have a track record of, I guess being maybe not hostile, but indifferent to family values, or in what we would consider normative or conservative or heritage family values. It was interesting. So now my character, George, was the father. And he's not exactly a genius. And he's a pretty decent football coach in the course of the show. And it's clear that he loves his wife. And he kind of has a love-hate relationship with his mother-in-law. And through the course of the program, it is what I would call the most sympathetic view of a husband/father on primetime television, aside from any show that has Tim Allen in it. And the reason why I say that is he's not portrayed as a genius. He's not portrayed as, the ruler of his household. He's not portrayed as, some boob either. He's not portrayed as anything but a hardworking guy that loves his family and is trying to do what's best. Now, he's saddled with a situation where his wife and he don't see eye to eye on some religious things. And I would say it'd be fair to conclude that while he didn't necessarily go along with it, he accepted that was his wife's thing and really didn't poo-poo it. And unfortunately, never really came around to that way of thinking in my, but again, how often and how common is that in our culture? So not a ding, it's just a fair observation. But what is shown, and what I guess is the hallmark characteristic is, he's exceedingly disappointed in the choices that his son makes. Dropping out of school, quitting the football team, knocking up a young lady. These are all bad things, but he works through it with his son. Now, I'm sure some of this is being goaded on by his wife. You can't, just kick him to the curb. But he makes allowances, and he takes care of, and he, does his best. And again, also in the course of the program, it shows him defend his son. And not only that, there was a specific episode which I think was quite enjoyable where his son's dating a girl or wants to date a girl, and she's at the house, and her stepdad shows up. And he interposes himself and says, nope, you're not going to hurt my son, and you're not going to go take this young lady home if she doesn't want to go. And he deals with it. And, in the modern world, that's toxic masculinity. This is bad behavior. He hit the guy, whatever. No, I don't look at it that way. He was protecting a young lady and, to a lesser extent, protecting his son. And he did what he thought was the right thing. And he was willing to take the consequences. Now, what's interesting is he was kind of portrayed as a little bit of a drunkard, but that's not what came across in the show. Yeah, he liked his beer. Yes, he liked to sit down and he, wanted to relax. Okay. Again, very typical of a lot of fathers of that time period, right, wrong, or otherwise. It's not unfair. But he also had what I would say is quite amount of patience with his son, Sheldon, right? So you got Georgie Jr. is the one that's kind of gone off the rails, and then Sheldon, the title character, if you will, the boy genius, and he deals with him, and he lets him get away with some stuff. His mother's kind of the enabler, but Dad doesn't play that game. And when Dad puts his foot down, the kid gets it. The kid obeys. And then, of course, there's the daughter, the twin sister, if you will. Now, they have a very interesting relationship. And being a father of two daughters, I got to say that the way he navigated that was probably not any different than any of us other fathers of daughters, right? And obviously, I had a do-over. I had daughter number 2 7 years later, and I'd like to think I did a better job. But it shows that he cared, and that he was concerned, and that he was just a good dad. Now, one of the things that was kind of also apparently baked into the show is the fact that he cheats on his wife. But a fact that didn't happen. In fact, and I'm not sure why they changed it, but kudos to the program, because that would have, and maybe it was just because everybody liked the character or the good actor, and he sold that he was a loving husband. Of course, he didn't do everything right. Of course, he made mistakes, and, as we all do. But again, it was his sympathetic view. And I appreciated that. And I thought it brought a lot of character and a lot of texture to the characters. And what I appreciated the most is because the guy did kind of take it on the nose in the original program, right? The old BBT there. The character was kind of redeemed or reformed in such a way as to where it's admitted that the boy genius, Sheldon, doesn't remember everything as well as he thought he did. That he was I forgot what the proper term is, not a trustworthy narrative, right? His story's a little flummoxed. And clearly it shows that his wife kind of has her own struggles and problems, later on, but she had them before he died. And the mother-in-law, same kind of thing here. So I guess what I want to say is, say what you want about Laurie and all the shows that he's been involved with, and, say what you want about whether you think that the trashy humor is appropriate or not appropriate. But my major takeaway is you've got a flawed character who is shown in a sympathetic light that clearly demonstrates his love for his children and his wife, steps up to protect each one of them in various ways, and does the best that he can. And really, that's something that's missing. That's something that doesn't happen often. Now, to be sure, I don't watch a lot of sitcoms anymore. To be sure, I'm not exactly familiar with every show that ever came out. So, take this with, the grain of salt. But what I would tell you is, at the conclusion of the show, you could, because they had done a good job, you could almost feel the pain of the other characters in the show when the guy dies. And, I've been tied up in some shows in the past. One of the things that we kind of reminisced on is the original run of ER, right? You got Rocket Romano. Dude loses his arm to a helicopter and then ends up dying from another helicopter. And the thing that I kept thinking is, I actually really liked that character. And he had really kind of had an interesting character arc. And he had kind of sort of started to redeem himself. And you kind of got past how much you hated him and kind of saw that he was a person, that he had value. And then they offed him. Now, for me, there was a little bit of a shock factor there. I saw it as somewhat humorous, but I was like, oh man, my favorite character is dead. And the way they pulled this off with this is that was the last episode, really, essentially. It was the funeral episode, right? All the people remember the good things about dad. They remember the good things about the husband, or in this case, the son-in-law. And they went off on a high note. Now, what's interesting is there's a whole lot of things that are going to happen, in this timeline. And again, look, it's fiction. It's a TV show. Yeah. I'm just pleasantly surprised, and I want to share that. And I think that that's something that's missing, because every father I remember from, I guess, if you take away Mr. Huxtable, unfortunately, Bill's proven himself to be of disrepute. But if you take away Mr. Huxtable, every father in a sitcom has basically been a moron or not capable of functioning. And it's his wife that keeps things together. And, some of them, the kids are just brats. Some of the kids are just smarter and quicker than the parents. In either way, they kind of destroyed the family dynamic. They were never helpful. They were never a positive thing that you would want to see reflected in your children. Now, in no way, shape, or form am I enthusiastic about what happens to the actually all three children of his have issues. But the other thing to keep in mind, all three of them have their trials and tribulations, but two of the three are ultimately shown to be quite successful. So George Jr. becomes the tire doctor, right? He becomes a rich guy because he's got a nose and an ear for business. And he demonstrates that in the program, and his father encourages it to the best of his ability. I mean, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't know what's all at play, but he's trusting his son to figure it out. And of course, the main character, Sheldon, we all know what happens to him because he shows up on his own little or on the other show later. But what's interesting is the daughter, right? The daughter's shown over the course of the program that she has an exceptionally high emotional intelligence, that she's very tuned in to other people. She observes this thing. Now, what I recall, and of course it's been a while since I watched the original program, The Big Bang Theory, I don't remember all the details, but she had relationships and she had children. But what I do remember is they showed her to be happy. Now, if I'm remembering that wrong, fine. But it showed her to be in kind of a good place, that people wanted to be around her. And again, that's kind of interesting. So if you think about it, George, the imperfect father that dies while his kids are young, ends up having 3 children that have varying degrees of success. I mean, you could say one becomes a multimillionaire and the other one gets a Nobel Peace Prize. And we don't know exactly all that happens with the daughter, but I would say that that's somewhat successful, certainly by the American metric. And he only had that impact for that short period of time with the 2 youngest kids. To me, that's encouraging. To me, that maybe shows that we don't have to make dad the butt of the joke. We don't have to make the husband a buffoon. We don't need to run these guys into the ground. Now, you're probably wondering, well, Callis, you've been talking about all this serious stuff. Why are you going off on a sitcom? Why are you spending time talking about a show that, well, maybe is beneath you or maybe isn't something that you're not interested in? Well, I would ask you to set aside your presuppositions for just a little bit there and enjoy it for what it is. But my major takeaway, and apart from the show, apart from the entertainment and the enjoyment, is it portrays a guy that served in the military, did so proudly, but doesn't wear it on his sleeve. It portrays a guy who likes his sport and is a middling coach and is trying to become successful and do the best he can to take care of his family. Shows a guy that loves his children, loves his wife, and he does what he thinks is best and keeps going at it and keeps trying and gets up every day. And through the trials and tribulations, he does what he thinks is best. And in many ways, this is a reflection of what we the people expect, not only from each other, but from our communities. We want for people to be successful. We want to be able to show a certain amount of love and acceptance of, hey, look, I'm not going to be okay with what you're doing there, but you're still my kid, or you're still my brother, you're still my neighbor. We're going to look out for each other. We're going to do what's best. And I don't know if that's the intention, and maybe I'm reading a little bit too deep into it, in fairness. But I got to say, my wife thinks it's funny that I'm so positive or so up on this program. But it's because it flies in the face of everything else that's out there. It's because it is not the same old, same old. I mean, just think about it. How many shows do you have where pretty much all the characters explore each other's sexuality with each other? How many shows do you have where they've got a long list on their arm of the different people they've been with? There really wasn't much in that. It was pretty much a kid-friendly program. Yeah, there was some salty humor in there, and yes, there's lots of throwbacks to the first show to come out that's later in life, and you can say what you want about it, but that's what we're looking for. We, the people, the underserved public, we just want a good quality show that's funny, that's not trashy, that tells a decent story, that we get invested in. To me, that was a worthwhile time that I invested the 7 seasons I watched the show, because it was satisfying. You got something out of it. Now, I wish, and again, this is another underlying point here, I wish that the media, the entertainment industry would take that away and learn something from this. I don't expect for entertainment to be an exact mirror of me. I'm even okay with a critique or let's call it a slanted look at somebody like me in humor or even in a drama presentation. I have pretty thick skin. That's not going to upset me too terribly much. But the idea of entertainment is you're supposed to seek a broad audience. You're supposed to bring something new. You're supposed to bring something that gets people interested in it. And, look, I might end up eating crow. They might they may come out and repudiate everything they ever did in the show. Again, it's just a TV show. It's just like a book, right? Only the TV show plays out over the course of 7 seasons. What is it, about 130 episodes or whatever? Yeah, something like that. Who knows? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Say there's 100 episodes. That in and of itself is an accomplishment, but it's nothing to live your life by. It's nothing that you should be upset about or get bent out of shape, but it is something that's pleasurable. And there's something to be said for just a little bit of mindless entertainment, some low-brow pleasure, if you will. I mean, we're not talking about trash. We're just... The concept of all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy has not been lost on me. I'm asking that it doesn't get lost on you. I mean, we all spend our time advocating for the things that are important. We all look into the political machinations of our leaders. We all deal with the economics of the day. We all deal with the latest trauma or fear that's coming down the pike. It's nice to be able to check out and just enjoy. We can call it balance. We can call it a cyclical response, right? A little bit of downtime. But at the end of the day, we want to have a little good cheer. We want to have something that we can sit back and just enjoy. Now, by no means is this a blanket endorsement of every show that these guys have made. By no means is this a blanket endorsement of everything that was ever said or done on the program. What it is an acknowledgement of one specific character who is usually the one that gets the short end of the stick in more ways than one. The father in the program was actually treated in a positive way, and it was sympathetic, and it was enjoyable. And if you're looking for something to enjoy, may I suggest that? I mean, it's really hard and a challenge in today's day and age to get out there and find a movie or a book or a television series and say, full-throated, I 100% endorse this. This is a fantastic thing, and you should love it. Because you just don't know. Everybody looks at things slightly different. Everybody views it. That being said, we're going to show up next week. We're going to do a review on book 3, I think, of the Blue Dawn series. I'm almost done with book 4. And the other thing that we're going to talk about is there's 2 other books I finished. One of them was the How to Be a Conservative by Robert Scruton. I think I already talked about it once, but I want to circle back and touch a few other things in light of the other book that I'm finishing. But folks, this is my labor of love, something that I invest in because I think it's of value to share my thoughts with you. Whether you choose to take them as your own or modify your own thoughts or dismiss them all entirely, that is clearly up to you. I would encourage you to understand that while there are things that are clearly black and white, there's a whole lot of things that aren't clearly black and white. Doesn't necessarily mean they're gray, but it just means, or maybe you should remember, that there's nuance involved in there, and you might need to spend a little time distinguishing whether or not it's okay. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to have a little fun. It's okay to maybe laugh at something that's a little embarrassing if you were to watch it in front of your young kids or your parents even, but that's okay. We're adults. We make up our own minds. We grow. In any case, I guess we're wrapping it up a little early today. This has been According to Callus. This was episode 654. And with that, I will see you on the other side.